look at the news, see the national debt clock ticking up, and just wonder, how high is too high? Like, at what point does it become a real, actual problem? It's a huge question, one that keeps people in power, economists and policymakers, awake at night.
So let's just get right into it. Is there some magic number, a kind of red line that a country crosses, and bam, suddenly everything goes sideways? That's the big question we're tackling today. All right, to figure this out, we've got to go back a bit to 2010. The World Bank put out this really landmark study. They were trying to find that exact number, and they crunched a ton of data. We're talking over 100 countries, nearly 30 years of information. And what do they find? They came back with this one single number that made headlines everywhere: 77%. They said that was the magic threshold for a country's public debt to GDP ratio. So, okay, what in the world is a debt to GDP ratio?
Okay, so this debt to GDP thing, it's actually the key to understanding all of this. It's just how you measure a country's debt compared to the size of its economy. The best way to think about it is like your own finances, right? Imagine you take all your debt, mortgage, student loans, credit cards, the whole shebang, and you compare it to your yearly salary. That's it. For a country, it's just a quick way to see if it can actually pay back its debts with the money it makes every year. And here's where that 77% number gets really interesting. The study found this huge difference depending on which side of the line you were on. If your debt was below 77%, hey, a little more debt could actually be good for you. It could fuel growth. But the moment you cross that line, the whole story changes. For every extra 1% of debt you pile on, your annual growth slows down by 0.017%. Now, I know that sounds like a tiny, tiny number, but trust me, when you add that up over years and decades, it is a huge weight on your economy.
But, it's never that simple, is it? Almost right away, the story gets a little more complicated. The researchers realized that this magic number wasn't one size fits all. For emerging markets, the danger zone actually started much earlier, at just 64%. So yeah, it's pretty clear that the type of economy you're dealing with makes a big difference.
And that just opens up this giant obvious question, right? If 77% is the supposed danger zone, how on earth does a country like Japan cruise along with a debt to GDP ratio of like over 200%? But at the same time, you see other countries get into serious trouble with way less debt. So what gives? Clearly there's more to it than just one number.
Well, the answer, it turns out, lies in this much richer, more complex idea called fiscal space. And this is about way, way more than just the debt number. The easiest way to think of it is as a government's financial wiggle room. How much room does it have to maneuver, to spend more or tax less, before things get unstable and investors start to get nervous?
Let's go right back to that personal finance analogy because it works perfectly here. Fiscal space isn't just about your debt versus your income. No, it's about your entire financial health. It's like asking, what are your savings like? What's your credit score? Is your job stable? It's the whole picture, not just one number on a page.
So for a whole country, this fiscal space isn't just one thing. It's more like a dashboard with a bunch of different gauges you have to watch. You've got debt sustainability. Can the government even pay its bills over the long haul? Then there's the balance sheet stuff, like who actually owns the debt. Is it in your own currency, which is way safer, or some foreign currency? Then you have these hidden risks. Think about private banks that might go belly up and need a government bailout. And maybe the most critical one of all, market perception. What do investors feel about the country? Because as we know in finance, what people think can become the truth really, really fast.
Okay, so when you start thinking this way, it leads you to a totally different place. And this quote from Peru's central bank back in 2016 just nails it. They said, these debt limits, they aren't some sturdy wall you can just lean up against. Nope. They're much more like thin ice. And trying to see how close you can get to the edge is, well, it's a really, really dangerous game.
So why exactly is it so dangerous? What happens when you test that thin ice? Well, it's this thing called fiscal fatigue. Think about it. The more debt you have, the harder it is to do anything about it. Your normal solutions, raising taxes, cutting spending, they start to become politically impossible or just economically painful. It's kind of like you're trying to run a marathon, but you're already totally gassed. Every single step just gets harder and harder.
Which brings us to the real takeaway here. That whole idea we started with, a nice, clean, simple line in the sand, it's just not right.
The reality is way messier and way more uncertain.
So instead of a fixed line, what we're actually looking at is more like a blurry, shifting danger zone. Maybe like a fog that moves around depending on the weather. And the fancy term experts use for this is the stochastic debt limit. Now, stochastic just means random or based on probability. It means the real tipping point is always moving. It can change based on, global interest rates or just a sudden panic among investors.
And just look at what a massive difference this makes. The old way of thinking, the deterministic view, said the limit was probably somewhere between 68 and 97% of GDP. Okay, a bit of a range, but manageable. But this new stochastic view, it shows a range that is frankly terrifying. The actual point of collapse could be as low as 5% or as high as 89%. It completely depends on the conditions at that exact moment. So think about the journey we just went on. We started with one nice simple number, 77%. Then we saw it was a bit more nuanced with 64% for emerging markets. Then that number became a range, and now we've ended up in this huge, foggy zone of uncertainty. The big lesson? There is no single magic number.
So what does this all mean? What's the real takeaway? It's that managing a country's debt isn't like trying to walk a tightrope where you just focus on not falling off. It's much more like being the captain of a ship in a foggy sea, knowing there are icebergs out there somewhere. Your goal isn't to see how close you can get to them. Your goal is to stay as far away as possible by leaving yourself a huge safety margin.
And that leaves policymakers with a really tough kind of unsettling question, one that doesn't have a simple answer, and it really shows you how hard it is to manage an economy in this crazy, uncertain world. And the question is this: if you know you're standing near a cliff, but the edge is always moving, just how far back from it should you stand?